So you just got done with Salkehatchie. And I'm going to say Salk a lot. That way I don't have to say Salkehatchie 1,000 times. But not everybody here knows what Salkehatchie is. So first, let's tell them what Salkehatchie is, and then we'll get to where we're going.
So Salkehatchie is sponsored by the Methodist Conference for the state. It's now its own deal within the Methodist Conference. But you go and repairing the houses of folks who can't necessarily do so with any other means. You go and you learn, you build, develop skills, get introduced to some things that most people aren't normally introduced to. And then from there, you'll watch, the biggest thing with the youth is you watch a lot of the youth go and come and, I don't want to say be completely changed by the end of the week, but some of them do end up completely changing by the end of the week. You have some that'll come and won't have a fear of standing up talking in front of people, and by the end of the week, they will go and they will be standing up front and talking to everybody by the end of Friday evening.
Okay. So SALK is Youth Summer Missions all across the state. I forget how many camps there are because it's ever changing, and it's really been changing thanks to COVID. So you went as a youth?
So this was, I do believe, my 8th year going to Salkehatchie. It was really kind of odd. Of course, we haven't had camp the last 3 years because of COVID. So I got a phone call back in February, March, saying, okay, look, Trey, we're going to have camp. All right. So Francis said, well, I'm going to need you to do something a little different this year than you normally do. I said, okay. Anybody who here has any idea what Salkehatchie and Francis, Mr. Garland can speak for that. That's, who knows what's going to end up at that point. So she says, well, I'm going to need you to take on I'm going to need you to take on a site leader role, which is a new deal for me. I've always gone as a camper for, been somebody's helping, if I had a problem, I went to somebody else. Hey, how do you fix this? Well, this year it was a little bit different of hey, Trey, how do I fix this? Kind of a scary thought. So, going on further from that, we kind of had two, site leaders. You had Lonnie Plyler, that's from up in Lancaster. He handled the floor deal on the inside of the house, and I handled the roof. And once again, I've always had somebody there that was a whole lot more educated on doing a roof than myself. So, we prospered. We got it completed. The sheeting on the house, we had to redo the whole sheeting that was on top of the house, probably 85-90% of it, and then we had to reshingle. Well, by day one, looking at the size of the house, this is probably the biggest roof I've ever worked on at Salkehatchie. Well, by the end of day one, we've actually tore off all the shingles, resheeted it, and had tar paper ready to lay shingles.
All right, so he was at Moncks Corner, Salkehatchie.
Moncks Corner.
Which is where we've typically been involved with as a church. So you're helping a family that doesn't really have a lot of means, right?
No, they don't. This husband and 6 kids. They were left the house about 2 years ago from the wife's parents. They passed away and they inherited the house from there, and they had the situation that they had at hand whenever we got there.
All right, so I'm assuming the roof's leaking if you're replacing it, right?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay. With that, when we were there, as a church we fed them lunch on Tuesday. Of course, I'm like, get everybody to the church. I want to go to the site, okay? And so Trey's showing me around, and we walk inside, and the bedroom, or one of the bedrooms, so you walk inside, you can't go past the door because there's not even any joist anymore. I'm looking at wet mud. And I don't know if y'all knew. Did y'all know it was that bad?
We knew it was going to be rather intensive, but as far as how much we were going to have to go in and dig out, it's a Salkehatchie house, so you really never know until you get started. Yeah. So, but we were expecting the worst, hoping for the best kind of deal, but that's what it ended up being. All
right, so how many kids are sleeping in how many bedrooms?
So the bedroom we were working on had 2 girls. I do not remember their ages, but they were the 2 youngest of the 6 kids. And then 4 boys are sleeping in the other bedroom, which was a little better than what what they had, but it was the two youngest girls that were sleeping in there. Both of them are no more than about 2.5 years old.
So so you get there, and it's always different when you get there, right?
It is completely different. Of course, during the daytime, one of the big things with Salkehatchie too is building that relationship with your homeowner. A lot of the times that your homeowner's there, you can have that correspondence throughout the day with them. We did what I thought was a good job this year was, instead of the homeowner being on site all day, she had 6 kids. So, of course, 6 kids, nail guns, hammers, saws laying around. It's not really a good idea. So she took the kids and they went and did whatever while we were working. They actually came to the church and ate lunch with us every day. And there were several nights out of the week they came and ate supper. So outside of just being on the site, getting to know the homeowner that way, they actually came to the church to make up for the time that they weren't able to be there during the week with us.
So, trying to think which way I want to go. So what were some of the things, tell about the fridge and the bed stuff.
So we'll skip to Thursday. So Thursday afternoon, whenever we go to leave, she happens to get home just before we leave, and her fridge is gone. Her fridge went out. So, again, they don't necessarily have the means to go out and get a whole nother refrigerator. So Frances began making her and doing her little magic, waving her little magic fingers like she does, and we ended up with a refrigerator Thursday afternoon. Well, on Friday morning, we got the refrigerator delivered along with 5 beds. 4 or 5 beds.
Because the kids were sleeping where?
The kids were sleeping on the floor. They had mattresses on the floor that they were sleeping on. That's all that they were sleeping on. So by the end of Friday, all 6 kids ended up having a bed to sleep on. And I must tell you, from going from the 2 girls whose rooms that we fixed, it was a good reaction from them. But the 4 boys who were old enough to kind of understand what was happening and go from what they were living on and sleeping on to actually going and sleeping in a bed, that was something. One of the little boys came in his room and says, "Oh my, Mom, I've got a bed." So that's just kind of one of those things, the really big eye-opener deals of going through. Of course, she was crying happy tears at this point, and Mom said, and the little boy said, "Look at him." I said, "Mom, don't cry. It's okay, Mom. We've got beds. It's gonna it's good." So,
so what's the reaction of the mom?
The mom is just absolutely ecstatic. She can't believe that we've come in, and I actually asked her at one point during the week. Of course, I don't want to say a negative aspect of this week, but one of the things that was different about this camp that normally is, we only had 2 youth this year. So normally you've got a bunch of, I don't want to say about 4 adults and 8 or 10 youth that's working on the house. So whenever you came in here and they told you a bunch of teenagers and kids and all were going to be working on your house, what was your thoughts? I said, "You can tell me you're a little sketched out. That's okay." So she says, "I'm not going to lie. It was kind of a little thing there." But she's like, "You know what? It'll be better than what we got." So, going on, and then the mom's reaction whenever she came in Friday, she walked in the girls' room, saw that the floor was down, saw the new flooring we put with it, the wall was painted, they didn't have the holes in the ceiling. Then she walked into the boys' room and saw that they had beds, that they no longer had to sleep on the floor, and she must have cried for 25 or 30 minutes in total. And that was just, like I said, going back to it, having the kids' reaction to that of, "Oh, hey, I'm not used to sleeping in a bed that's off the floor." I imagine for most of us in here, that's, you don't have to worry about that situation. But from going from sleeping on the floor to sleeping in a bed, it meant something to those 4 boys.
And I mean, you ended up with beds and bedding and
bedding, mattresses,
pillows,
boxes, pillows, the whole 9 yards. And for the 2 girls, we ended up with a crib and a toddler's bed for the 2 girls as well.
And there's a refrigerator that works.
And a working refrigerator.
Yeah. So when you and I were talking, I start with, where do you see God moving, and we started telling stories, or you started telling stories, and in the midst of it, it changes how your perspective is. When you see what God is doing by going and serving, Why do you go? And by the way, this wasn't on your question, so sorry. Why do you go?
So I go. For me, it's a very fulfilling moment to know that, hey, you're going and you're getting these folks a situation a whole lot better than it was before you got there. But it's also bigger than that, and you get to watch the youth, the families that you're with. One of the years I went, the guy had never been to church, and we go to Wesley United Methodist Church right there in Moncks Corner on Sunday morning for a brief little period of time for about 40 minutes. And when I tell you, when we were in there for 40 minutes is up, Francis stands up, says, "Preacher, we got to go." So that year he was not going to church, was for whatever reason he has. But so we went back 2 years later, and he had been going to church religiously since that time. So that's truthfully what it is. And then the youth, and you come in, and it's big. It's not bigger than. It's just an added bonus is, they're building skills that they can use for the rest of their lives. You come in, you got your little handyman stuff you can do, and this, that, and the other. Instead of having to call somebody to do this, well, guess what? You can just go and do it yourself.
I mean, because you and I laughed. I grew up with a granddaddy that was a carpenter. I said, yeah, a child picks up a hammer and their hands this far from the head of the hammer. I smirked when we were talking about it because I'm like, I can hear my grandfather going, and get your hand down to the bottom of that thing. And you're talking about a child actually not knowing how to use his wrist.
So you use a hammer's the leverage, put your hand at the bottom of it, you get a whole lot better swing. And the kid I was like, hey, try doing this way. Oh, wow, that looks so much better. Yeah.
The nail actually goes into the wood that way,
It
right?
goes with a whole lot less hits.
So as a leader, I've only experienced Salkehatchie as a leader. Okay, I've done youth missions my whole life, but I wasn't a youth in the United Methodist Church. But so there's this component of going and serving. There's a component of worship at night, and then the bonding between youth. And so this year was challenging because you're starting over. But talk about you had somebody that you saw a youth who's really quiet, and where were they?
So whenever she came in the first day, she was, quiet, and then Friday afternoon, for that aspect of it, doing the symbol service, she got up to do her symbol service and just rattled off. And I guess it was just the aspect of being around everybody for the week got her enough of that courage built up to by the end of the week she was actually able to get up and rattle off what her symbol service was, what her symbol was for the week.
That child was pretty quiet Tuesday at lunch, because I figured out who you were talking about pretty quick. All right, so what else you got? There's 22 minutes, man. I got you. You got anything else? Go for it. How did you grow? How did you grow this week? Because, you went from camper to leader, but you're also having to think about helping kids. And
so it's a new aspect going from a camper to a site leader with it. Having to understand that there's more, and working on the roof it was 4 of us mostly, but then it was 4 campers, and then we had 2 more helpers from Moncks Corner Methodist Church that came and joined us. But it was kind of interesting, going from the camper aspect, going to the site leader aspect, again, going from everybody, me being able to go to somebody, hey, I've got a problem, how do I fix it? And then, hey, how do we start this? Hey, how do we do this? How do we move along from here? And then, hey, how does this end up putting it together? It's an interesting aspect on how all that goes full cycle, and you just end up being on the opposite side of it and have people coming to you instead of, hey, preacher, how do you do this? Instead of, coming to me for stuff.
And then I call, right?
And then John calls.
You good?
I'm good.
All right. Y'all tell Trey thank you.